Hey guys, this week we will be reviewing slope, but before we begin, let's talk about the calculator download again. First, you want to open up your Google Classroom app. From there, you want to open up our class, and at the bottom, you want to press classwork. At the very top, under acceptable use policies, you should see calculator download here. You want to press that. The top link is for if you have an Android phone or tablet. The bottom link is for if you have an Apple product like an iPhone, iPad. Because I'm using an iPad, I'm going to click on the bottom link. It should take you directly to whatever store that you're using, the App Store or the Play Store. It should take you directly there. There's a very similar app that costs of this particular app right here. This version should be free. If the picture in the calculator, if it's black in the picture for the app, that's the free one. The one that costs, if you look down here, the one that costs should be like a grayish tone, like the one I have on my screen here. I'm going to show you both versions side by side. So, let me quit out of there. So, if you look on the left-hand side of the screen, the free version of the calculator is going to have ads. The pro version is not. If you click on Y equals on both, the free version, you can use Y1 and Y2. On the pro version, it's free reign. You can use the entire thing. If you hit stat on both of them, you can enter a table on both versions, but if you hit stat and you go over to calc on both versions, only the pro version will allow you to use options 4, 5, and 0 like we use in school. Now, you do not need to use the pro version to finish your assignments in Google Classroom. It is optional if you choose the pro version. You do not have to get it. You can do your assignments with just the free version. Another thing that we're going to be using the calculator for, let me quit out of everything. Go back to Y equals. If we were to put an equation into the calculator, let's just say 5x plus 1, 5x plus 1, and we want to check the table using second graph. You can check the table on the free version as well as the pro, but that's very good for the free version. You can still do everything that we have to do in the Google Classroom. You will still be able to do it with just the free version. All right. I will be using the pro version during the video so we can review steps you would usually do at school with your actual calculator. So with that being said, let's go ahead and let's dive in for the week. Like I said before, we will be reviewing slope given 2 points. We will also be reviewing how to write a linear equation given 2 points, how to write a linear equation given 2 points and the slope. Given 1 point in the slope. But let's just start with the first one we have here. Number 1, it says find the slope of the line. So it's giving us 2 points because it gives us a graph and then it gives us 2 points on that graph. And if you remember in school, we have 2 different ways that we can solve for slope. We can either use box method. That's what we're going to be using. Make sure you have pencil and paper so you are taking notes. We can use box method or we can do it the calculator way. We're going to start with box method here. I'm going to write down the steps. The first step is to stack your order pairs, stack your points. Make sure you're writing this down. Stack your points on top of each other. And draw a box. Step 2. You want to subtract top to bottom. Top to bottom. Subtract top to bottom. And then step 3, you're going to divide right to left. Make sure you write these steps down. Box method. Number 1, stack your points on top of each other and draw a box. Step 2, subtract top to bottom. And then step 3, divide right to left. Now we're going to talk about applying each one of these steps right now. Make sure you have these written down. I'm going to clear it off right now. Okay, so in this first problem here, we have 2 points here. So I'm going to take my first point, -2, 3. And I'm going to take my second point, 2, -3. You see, I just stacked them right on top of each other. I didn't switch any numbers around. I just pulled them right out, stacked them on top of each other. From there, I'm going to draw a box. That was step 1 in box method. I'm going to draw a box. Step 2, subtract from top to bottom. Subtract. So I'm just going to put little subtraction symbols on the side to remind me that I am subtracting. What I mean by top to bottom, well, I'm going to take my top number here, -2 minus 2. So I have -2 minus 2. And then I also going to have 3 minus a -3. That should be a negative. It didn't really look like a negative. 3 minus a -3. So I have 3 minus a -3. Now, we can bring up our calculator. Oh, I have to open up the Pro one real quick. Sorry. And get that pulled up. All right. Open up my calculator here, and I'm going to do this first one right here. -2 minus 2. Well, that'll give me a -4. And then my other problem on this side was 3 minus a -3, and that's going to give me 6. The last step in box method was to divide from right to left. So I used to just make little symbols to show you right to left. So that means the number on the right, in this case, is going to be 6. That's going to be on the top, dividing right to left. 6 divided by a -4. So I'm going to go to my calculator here. 6 divided by a -4. That's going to give me a -1.5. It's going to give me a -1.5. So I know that my slope, remember, the m is the variable for slope. So m equals a -1.5. Look at my answer choices here. Oh, they're all in fraction. So I need to convert to fraction. So to convert to fraction, remember in the calculator, you hit math, number 1 for fraction, and enter. They will give you a -3/2. In that case, the answer would be D. Now, that is the box method way. That is one way that you can solve for slope. Now, I said that we have another method that we can use, and it's the calculator way. And let's just write down the steps here. If you remember on the calculator, if you have 2 points, you want to take your 2 points, do the exact same thing we did for box method. Stack them on top of each other. Take this first point, put it there. The second point, put it here. 2 and -3. Instead of making a box, this time we're going to make a table. Now I have a table of X values, and I have a table of my Y values. So if you have a table, remember, you can go to stat on your calculator. You want to go to edit. And remember, in L1, you're going to put your X values. And then in L2, you're going to put your Y values. So far, for our steps, we have stat, edit, X goes in L1, and your Y values go in L2. So let's go ahead and let's fill out our table here. We have -2 and +2. And then in Y, we have +3 and -3. Now from there, you want to hit stat again. So let's add on to our steps over here. Stat again, and you want to arrow over to calc. We would arrow on the calculator in school. Here, we're just going to press calc. And we're working with linear functions. Remember, we're trying to find the slope of a line. If our graph is a line, that means that we're working with a linear function. So our option is going to be number 4 for line reg. You want to hit number 4, and then you want to hit enter. I'm just going to start my steps up here. You want to hit enter. From there, it's going to, on this particular calculator, it's going to give you an error. Don't worry about this error. It's null and void because it still gives you the real answer. And remember, in the calculator, slope-intercept form is y equals ax plus b, where a is your slope. So for our variables, it says that a equals a -1.5. And that's the exact same thing we got when we did box method. We converted to fraction, and they gave us an answer of D. So you have 2 different options to solving for slope. All right. Just get that real quick. Let's move on. Let's look at number 2. Gives us a graph again. We have 2 points. 1 point, which is 2, 3. And this other point right here is kind of hard to see. But remember, we can always just put our pencil on a point, drag it to the x-axis because x comes first. That was terrible. Let me try again. On the point, drag it. And we're touching a -1. So we know our x value is -1. And then our y, put it back on the point, drag it to the y-axis. 1 second. Drag it. Put it back on the point, drag it to the y-axis, and we are at -2. I'm sorry, I had a little technical difficulties there. And I'm going to draw my box around my ordered pairs here. Box method said we're going to subtract from top to bottom. So I'm going to do 2 minus a -1 and also 3 minus a -2. Pull up that calculator there. 2 minus -1 give you +3. 3 minus -2 will give you a +5. It's going to give you a +5. Last step is going to be to divide from right to left. So that means that 5 is going to be on top. So 5 divided by 3. 5 divided by 3. It's going to give you a decimal. We want a fraction. So we're going to hit math, number 1 for fraction, and enter. And it's going to give us a +5/3. +5/3. And in this case, answer would be D. Answer would be D. All right, let's take a look at number 3 here. Let's clear this off really quick. Let's look at 3. It gives us 2 points, so we know that we can do box method. We have 2 options to solve number 3. We can do box method or we can use Mr. Slope Guy. Well, let's start with box method first. I'm going to take my first point, 1, 2. My second point, 1, -3. And I'm going to draw a box. Subtract from top to bottom. So 1 minus 1. 2 minus a -3. 1 minus 1 will give me 0. 2 minus a -3 will give me a +5. I'm going to divide from right to left. So I'm going to be dividing by 0. We know that in rules, you cannot divide by a 0, even if we go to our calculator here. If we go to our calculator and we do 5 divided by 0, it's going to give you an error, divide by 0 error. You cannot divide by 0. So we know that if you cannot divide by 0, then your answer must be undefined. We know that the answer is going to be D here. But if you guys can remember Mr. Slope Guy, let's explain him really quick. I did that wrong. There we go. Just means that if you have a graph that looks like this, I meant to make that smaller, it's going to be a positive graph. It's going to have not positive graph. It's going to have a positive slope. If you have a graph that looks like this, you're going to have a negative slope. If you have a vertical line for a graph, your slope is going to be undefined. It's going to be undefined. And if you have a horizontal line, then your slope is going to be equal to 0. So if we look at our graph on number 3, we have a vertical line, up and down line. So if we just look at Mr. Slope Guy, we will automatically know that, well, there's no use for me even doing any type of calculations really, because I know that according to Mr. Slope Guy, it's going to be undefined. And another way that you can look at it as well, we can take our 2 points, 1, 2, and 1, -3. Make a table. Ask yourself. Make a different color, I'm sorry. Have my X values and my Y values. Ask yourself, is this a function? No, it's not a function because the X's repeat. Remember, if your X's repeat, you can't have a function because the slope will always be undefined. All right, let's move on. Let's look at number 4. 2 options that you can solve this. You can either do box method or you can use Mr. Slope Guy. Again, if I write them out really fast, this time I have a horizontal line. So my slope is going to be equal to 0. In this case, answer C. All right. For questions number 5 through 10, we're going to be doing the exact same thing. We're going to be finding the slope and the y-intercept of the graph. We're going to be finding the slope and the y-intercept of the graph of the linear function. So remember, slope-intercept form, as stated in the Marquez reading. I'm so sorry. I lost my puppy. Richie, stop. Go sit down. Go sit down. As stated in the Marquez reading, we have y equals mx plus b. That is going to be our slope-intercept form, where m is your slope and b is your y-intercept. So if we look at our problem here on number 5, let's make it a little bit bigger. Y is equal to a negative 7x plus 2. Well, let's look at the particular spots that we need to be looking at. We're looking for the slope and the y-intercept. Well, the number in front of the x is the slope. So in this problem, the number in front of the x is going to be negative 7. So we know that negative 7 is going to be our slope. And we know that a positive 2 will be our y-intercept. So if we look at our answer choices here, let's find the one that says negative 7 for slope. Not going to be that one. Oh, I think I found one right here. In this case, number 5 would be C. Just move on here. Let's look at number 6. Let's find the slope and the y-intercept. Okay, well, we already have an equation here that is solved for y. So we know the number in front of the x is going to be our slope. So our slope is 1/8. Well, let's look at our answer choices from here, see if we can go ahead and find it. Okay, slope is 8. Nope. 1/3. Nope. Already found it. Let's just do a cross check. D is the answer. D says that y-intercept is 3. Well, let's look back at our problem here. Is that the case? It is indeed the case. So in this case, number 6 is D. Now let's look at number 7. Number 7 says 2x plus y equals 7. It's not already solved for y. So we have to solve it for y. Remember, when we solve for y in class, we use cross method. If the equation is already in standard form, you read about standard form in your mark ahead reading this week, it's ax plus by equals c. We have an equation in standard form. If we have one that's in standard form, we can do cross method. First thing is to make it cross and to change x. If it's positive, make it negative. If it's negative, make it positive. Step 2 is to keep answer. Whatever the equation is equal to, you're going to put that in the next box. Keep answer. In step 3, you're going to keep y for both your bottom boxes. Keep y for bottom. And the last thing you have to do is divide. Divide top to bottom. So let's do an example here. It's number 7. First thing is to change x. Well, in this case, we have a positive 2 in front of x. So to change it, we're going to make it a negative 2. The next step is to keep answer. Keep answer. Well, it's equal to a positive 7. So I'm going to put positive 7 in this box. Step 3 is to keep y for the bottom. Keep y for both the bottoms. So in this case, we don't see a number in front of the y, but we can always assume that it's going to be number 1. So we have a positive 1. So I'm going to keep y for my bottom boxes. And then I'm going to divide from top to bottom. Now, this column will give you your slope. This column will give you your y-intercept. So if I divide from top to bottom, that's negative 2 divided by 1 and 7 divided by 1. So negative 2 divided by 1 equals negative 2. And 7 divided by 1 will give you 7. So I have a slope of negative 2 and a y-intercept of positive 7. So let's look at my answer choices here. If I have a slope of negative 2, the only one that can match up would be answer choice C. Answer choice C. Pause this video and see if you can work through number 8. Really, guys, just try to pause it and see if you can work it out and come back and play it and see if you got the right answer, and let's go over it together. All right, let's look at number 8 here. I have 3x minus 4y is equal to 20. I'm going to do cross method. I'm going to make my cross. In the first box, I'm going to change x. It's a positive 3, so I'm going to make it negative. Then I'm going to keep my answer. It's positive 20, so I'm going to keep it positive 20. Last step is to keep my y for both bottom boxes. I have a negative 4, so I'm going to put negative 4 in both bottom boxes. Last thing to do is to divide from top to bottom. Top to bottom. So I have a negative 3 divided by a negative 4. And then I have 20 divided by a negative 4. Well, I know that a negative 3 divided by a negative 4, well, that's just going to give me a positive 3 over 4. So that's my slope. Because remember, this column gives you your slope. This one gives you your y-intercept. And then I have 20 divided by -4, which will give me a -5. So I have a y-intercept of -5. Well, let's look at my answer choices for number 8. Slope of 3/4. Well, I can eliminate B and D. And then I have a y-intercept of -5. So my only option would be answer choice A. All right, let's keep it moving here. Number 9, pause it and see if you can do it yourself before we go over it. All right, we have a problem here. -4y plus 2x equals a -20. Remember, first step, change x. Going to make my cross here. I know some of you guys probably went right here and did change x and put a +4 there. That's not your x. You have to make sure that you're paying attention to how the problem is written. Your x in this case is in the second spot. So we have a +2. So to change x, I'm going to make it a -2. I'm going to keep my answer here, which is a -20. And then I'm going to keep my y, which is a -4. I'm going to keep that for both bottom spots on the bottom. Divide from top to bottom. Divide top to bottom. And that's going to give me -2 divided by a -4. And also -20 divided by a -4. So -2 divided by a -4, well, that's just going to give me a +1/2. And a -20 divided by a -4, that's going to give me a +5. So I have a slope of 1/2 and a y-intercept of 5. So let's look at our problems here. Okay, I can eliminate A and D. And then now I have a y-intercept of 5. Note that my only answer choice here would be C. All right, let's look at 10. 10 should be easy. It's already solved for y. So our slope in this case, remember, y equals mx plus b, where m is your slope and b is your y-intercept. So what number's in front of that x? 2. So 2's our slope. We only have one option for answer choices, which would be D. All right. Let's look at number 16 here. It says find the slope of the line through the given points. Remember, you can either do box method or you can do the calculator way. Do not get box method and cross method confused. Box method is for when you find slope. Cross method is if you're solving for y. So in this case, we're going to do box method. So I have 2 points. I'm going to take my first point, -7, 7. Then I'm going to take my second point, -1, 10, and put it right underneath my first point. And I'm going to draw a box around them. Remember, in box method, we're subtracting from top to bottom this time. We're subtracting. So I have a -7 minus a -1, and I have 7 minus 10. Just blank that out. I have 7 minus 10. So go to your calculator here. Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to bring it up small. There we go. I have a -7, clear, -7 minus -1. It's going to give you a -6. And then I have 7 minus 10, which will give you a -3. Remember, you're going to be dividing from right to left in box method. So that means, change my color here, -3 divided by a -6. So -3 divided by a -6 will give you +0.5. Convert the fraction. Math, option 1, and enter, which will give you a +1/2. So our answer in this case would be A. All right, moving on.